We are convened today in view of events of an extraordinary and alarming character. The element of disunion which, in a portion of the United States for many years, vented itself in threats and menaces, has culminated in open rebellion, and an unnatural and causeless civil war has been precipitated against the general government. Unprincipled and ambitious men have organized a despotism and an armed force for the purpose of overthrowing the government which the American people have formed for themselves, and of destroying that constitutional framework under which we've enjoyed peace and prosperity, and from a small and feeble people grown and expanded to a rank among the first nations of the earth. The enormity of this rebellion is heightened by the consideration that no valid cause exists for it. The history of the civilized world does not furnish an instance where a revolution was attempted for such slight causes. No act of oppression, no attempted or threatened invasion of the rights of the revolting states has existed, either on the part of the general government or of the loyal states. But the principle has been recognized and observed that the right of every state to regulate its domestic institutions should remain inviolate. The authorities of the revolting states, and subsequently that of their confederacy, have proceeded to acts of robbery and theft upon the property of the United States within their limits. Forts, arsenals, arms, military stores, and other public property have been seized and appropriated for use against the power of the general government, and the customs houses and mints in southern cities with large amounts of treasures have been feloniously robbed. These acts have been followed by military demonstrations and strategical operations against the United States forts at Pensacola and Charleston, the latter of which, under the gallant commander, Major Anderson, after a bombardment of 34 hours from beleaguering batteries of the insurgents, was evacuated on the 13th instant, and the flag of the Union withdrawn. These acts of outrage and daring rebellion have been equaled only by the forbearance of the general government. Unwilling to precipitate a conflict which must surely involve the country in all the calamities of civil war, the present government of the United States has exhausted every effort for peace and every measure for bringing back to their allegiance the disaffected and misguided states. Such forbearance on the part of the government, while it has served to place the conspirators in a moral wrong, is no longer justifiable, and the country hails with entire unanimity and with ardent enthusiasm the decision of the President to call into requisition the whole power of the nation for repressing the rebellion and repelling threatened aggressions. From every part of the country, in all the loyal states, there is one united voice for sustaining the Union, the Constitution, and the integrity of the United States government. All partisan differences are ignored and lost in the higher principle of patriotism. In this patriotic enthusiasm, Vermont eminently participates. Her citizens, always loyal to the Union, will, in this hour of peril, nobly rally for the protection of the government and the Constitution. On the 15th instant, the President of the United States issued his proclamation calling forth the militia of the several states of the Union to the aggregate number of 75,000 in order to suppress treasonable combination and cause the laws to be duly executed. The quota required of Vermont for immediate service is 1 regiment of 780 officers and privates. On receiving the requisition from the Secretary of War for this regiment, I ordered the Adjutant and Inspector General to adopt the proper measures for calling into service such of the volunteer companies who are necessary to make up the complement. Having adopted the foregoing preliminary measures, I availed myself of the constitutional provision for convening the General Assembly in an extra session. not doubting that you, gentlemen, representing the universally expressed patriotism of the citizens of this state, will make all necessary appropriations and provisions for defraying the expenses already incurred and carrying into execution further measures for placing our military quota at the service of the central government. Conceiving it imminently probable that at an early day further calls will be made upon this state for troops, I respectfully call your attention to the importance of adopting immediate measures for a more efficient organization of the military arm of the state. During the long interval of peace which we have enjoyed, while our citizens have been uninterrupted in their unlawful or lawful industrial pursuits, the importance of a military organization and discipline has been lost sight of. Our laws in relation to the militia have been subjected during nearly a quarter of a century to numerous isolated amendments and alterations until as a code they are disjointed and altogether too cumbrous for the basis of a regular and effective organization. I recommend that the legislature should promptly remedy these defects and adopt such measures as shall provide effectively for organizing and arming and equipping the militia of the state and for reasonably compensating the officers and privates when required to meet for exercise and drill. I desire also to urge upon you the duty of making contingent appropriations of money to be expended under the direction of the executive for the outfit of any additional military forces which may be called on by the general government. The occasion is an extraordinary one. Intelligence reaches us that the Virginia Convention of Delegates has in secret session passed an ordinance of secession, and that the governor of the state has assumed to order the seizure of the United States forts, arsenals, and vessels within the limits of that state. The federal capital is menaced by an imposing and well-armed military force, and the government itself and the National Archives are in immediate peril. Such is the emergency in view of which I invoke your immediate action. The legislatures of other states have made liberal appropriations and extensive military arrangements for aiding the government, and their citizens are hastening to the rescue of our country's flag. We shall discredit our past history should we, in this crisis, suffer Vermont to be behind her sister states in her patriotic sacrifices for the preservation of the Union and the Constitution. I feel assured, gentlemen, that you will best reflect the sentiments of your constituents by emulating in your legislative action the patriotism and liberality of the noble states which have already responded to the call of the government. It is devoutly to be hoped that the mad ambition of the secession leaders may be restrained and the impending sanguinary conflict averted. But a hesitating, halfway policy on the part of the administration of the loyal states will not avail to produce such a result. The United States government must be sustained and the rebellion suppressed at whatever cost of men and treasure. And it remains to be seen whether the vigorous preparations that are being made and the immense military force called into service by the President are not the most probable and certain measures for a speedy and successful solution of the question. May that divine being who rules among the nations and directs the affairs of men interpose in his merciful providence and restore to us again the blessings of peace under the aegis of our national Constitution.
Soon after convening, House Speaker Augustus Huntoon appointed a select committee to draft a report in response to the governor's message. The Senate appointed a like committee. The House report read in part as follows. I give you the Speaker of the House, Augustus Huntoon.
Your committee are now unanimously of the opinion that the rebellion now in progress in the southern states is characterized by an entire want of excuse and justification. Such a wanton and reckless disregard of honor and the rights of property, such a felonious, radical lawlessness and treachery as is unparalleled in the history of the world. Secession is treason. To yield to its demands is to invite it again. If one state may secede, all may. The general government should be firmly established beyond the reach of any danger from its assailants. Its future safety, perpetuity, prosperity, and glory, with all that is valuable in her institutions and shelter under its protection, depends, under God, upon the complete and triumphal suppression of the rebellion now in progress. We utterly repudiate the doctrine that a state may secede from the Union. As I have said, if one state may secede, all may. No government can possibly be constructed on such a basis and live, because it embraces within itself the seed of its own dissolution. However much Vermont deprecates the horror of civil war, she believes that the triumph of rebellion and the anarchy and confusion necessarily resulting therefrom would be infinitely more deplorable, as it would result in the loss of our blood-bought civil liberties and the entire subversion of the idea of free government. The issue now before the loyal states is whether treason and rebellion shall carry its piratical banner triumphantly through the land, whether the central government, constitution, and union shall be overturned, and our people be subject to the rule of traitors and rebels, and whether we will defend our liberties, protect and maintain our governments, and hand down to future generations those institutions established by Washington and his compatriots of the War of Independence. Vermont, on this question, has no hesitation in avowing her choice. She assures her sister states and the executive authority of the Union that she is ever loyal and true and will do her part in this hour of trial and danger. Your committee, in accordance with these views, concur with the committee appointed by the Honorable Senate. Upon the same subject is recommending the adoption of the following resolutions. That the doctrine of secession as avowed and carried out by the so-called seceding states is absurd, pernicious, and totally destructive to the true theory of the government. And that all who attempt to carry out this doctrine by an armed force, and all who render them aid and comfort in so doing, are traitors and rebels, and as such, whatever may be the cost, should be made to suffer the penalties of the law of treason. That in the present aspect of affairs, the further forbearance of the central government toward those who have raised the arm of rebellion will not be a virtue. We therefore respectfully recommend the most prompt, vigorous, and decisive measures to quell this insurrection, enforce the laws, and preserve, protect, and defend the constitutions of the United States. And of this purpose, we tender to the President of the United States such aid as he may judge to be the duty of Vermont to render in this emergency.
By late Friday, the business of the extra session had been completed. Lieutenant Governor Levi Underwood addressed the Senate. I give you Lieutenant Governor Underwood.
Senators, the business of the session has been brought to a close. It has been the most important session that any legislative body has ever had in this state. Within the past week, We have sought the largest sum of money that has ever been raised in the state of Vermont, and for a most important purpose. We have appropriated the sum of $1 million for the purpose of maintaining our national flag and resisting rebellion to our common country. That flag has been grossly insulted. But that's not where our patriotism ends. It becomes our duty to vindicate the honor of our flag and to resent that insult. And the many insults that have been spoken by the voice of an indignant people, we must respond, and respond by way from the mouths of thousands of cannon. We have resolved to draw the sword, and may now swear by the God of all battles that that sword shall never be returned to its scabbard, as long as the voice of treason shall be raised in violation of our country's laws. Allow me to thank you for the dispatch with which you have discharged the business of this session, and the kindness and courtesy of which you have aided me in the discharge of my duties. The time having arrived then, by joint resolution of the two houses, I am required to adjourn this session, this very special session that will remain in the minds and the hearts of millions and Vermonters in the future. So thereby, I declare the same adjourned without delay.
According to historian Gigi Benedict, within 24 hours, a bill appropriating $1 million for war expenses had passed both houses by unanimous votes, and in 42 hours from the time it met, the legislature had completed its work and adjourned, having also passed acts for the organizing, arming, and equipping of 6 more regiments, in addition to the one already called for 2 years of service, giving to each private $7 a month of state pay, in addition to the $13 offered by the government, providing for the relief of the families of volunteers at state expense in cases of destitution, committing to the governor the duty of organizing the regiments and appointing field officers thereof, and laying the first war tax of 10 cents on the dollar of the grand list. This rapid dispatch of business showed the intense desire of the people to immediate action in the appropriation of $1 million, a much larger sum than had as yet been voted by any state in proportion to population, and in the provisions for the recruiting of volunteers for 2 years, while as yet the government had called for only 3 months' troops, and for adding to the quota called for 6 more regiments. The legislature expressed the general conviction of its members that the war was not to be one of short duration or small dimensions. And in these respects, as well as the unanimity and stern resolution which characterized all the action and utterances of the session, the legislature well represented the people of Vermont. A great wave of patriotism swept the land. The heather was on fire, said Tickner. War meetings were quickly organized throughout Vermont to encourage enlistments. That concludes our reenactment. Now, it is my great pleasure to move to a little entertainment here. We've brought in the best that Vermont has to offer for musical entertainment about the Civil War, of course, and we've turned, of course, to Pete Sutherland, Patty Casey, and Colin McCaffrey.
We're dancing tonight on the old campground. Give us a song of cheer. Are we